Aloha and welcome back to the Share the Poi podcast. Today is episode 4 and we have our guest host back again, Damon Nagata. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
Wonderful. And our guest today is... Your name?
Oh, hi. Aloha. I'm Sage Takehiro. I'm Camryn's auntie. And I'm also a teacher, among other things.
That is wonderful. So can you start us off by sharing a little bit about yourself, like your educational and personal background?
So personally, born and raised in Hilo. Went to college at Manoa, graduated from Hilo High School. I'm the youngest of 3 girls, one of them being Camryn's mother. We all grew up in Hilo. We all went to Manoa on Oahu. I lived in Oahu for probably like 10 years total. And then I lived in China for a year. I traveled a bunch, and then I decided that I wanted to come home after seeing China.
Wonderful. So then how'd you end up as a teacher?
I started off as a teacher. Actually, when I was in college, I don't know if they still do this, but to get a Pauahi scholarship for a post-high scholarship, when I was getting post-high scholarships, you had to do 40 hours of community service. Do they still make you guys do the community service? Yeah? I don't know. Anyways, so in order to get the post-high scholarship, you had to do 40 hours of community service. And a lot of my community service was with educational institutions. So my first community service was with a charter school called Halau Kumana on Oahu. And at the time, they were based on campus. So I thought it would be really convenient for me to go and do my community service there in between classes. So I ran literature circles there. And I kind of just continued volunteering with Halau Kumana. I did other volunteering stuff too. Like I went to Kaho'olawe. I did did site restoration for different heiaus around Oahu. So that was really cool. But most of my volunteer work was done with Halau Kumana. And I was able to build like a professional relationship with them. And after I graduated, I ended up working for them as a curriculum developer. So when I graduated from undergrad, I wanted to come home just to take a break from Oahu. And then Bao Bao, your grandmother, aka my mother, was like, okay, perfect. She was a teacher, and they were she was a teacher at Connections Public Charter School, and at the time they were opening their high school up. So she's like, okay, perfect, you're coming home because we need high school teachers. So I didn't even really have a choice of the matter. I just kind of got voluntold to teach at the new high school, and I taught 9th and 10th grade Hawaiian culture and English. And I ended up taking those students to Kaho'olawe for a weekend. So that was like my first that was my first ever huaka'i as a teacher to Kaho'olawe.
That is extreme.
It was good fun though. And then I went back to school to get my master's degree in English. And during that time, I worked as I had a graduate assistantship. So it's basically where you get tuition. You get free tuition, but it's not really free because you have to work for it. So I had to work as a teaching assistant and as a tutor in the writing lab. So I was teaching. Then I also taught at other charter schools, like part-time. And then after I graduated, I worked in curriculum development for Halau Kumana. I went back to Halau Kumana, not as a volunteer, but as a paid curriculum developer for their nonprofit organization. So that was really fun. That was super cool. I got to learn about sailing and voyaging, and some of the texts that we developed curriculum for at that time, I still teach in my class today, like Keao Mele Mele.
So would you say that teaching is what first connected you to Hawaiian culture and practice?
100%, absolutely, because when I was growing up, there was not a lot of Hawaiian culture in education at all. And most of the people who are active in Hawaiian culture were teachers in some form or another, whether they were my hula teachers or whether they were school teachers. Like most of the big movers and shakers in the Hawaiian cultural movement worked in education at some point. And so to me, when I looked at those Hawaiian leaders in the community, they were also teachers. So to me, I kind of always thought that teaching came with the culture. It was part of the culture. So minus that, to this day, I don't even think of myself as a teacher. I just think of myself as like a professional learner. I just love learning. And I think that for me, being a teacher isn't really about teaching students. It's more about like learning together with them. I feel like learning is a lifelong thing. And because I love it so much, I want to learn about all these things and I want to take my students on this learning journey with me. And like, we're just all learning together. That's kind of how I view education.
Wow.
So like growing up, how did you experience, or if you did at all, how did you experience the blending of like your Asian and Hawaiian cultures?
The Asian culture. You know, my mom is fresh off the plane from Taiwan. She was born in China, but she grew up in Taiwan. My Chinese grandparents were actually refugees, and they sought refuge in Taiwan. My grandfather taught art there. He studied in New York at Parsons. He also studies as an intern for Disney and in Hollywood. So having them come here in 1969, it was always interesting for me to think as a Hawaiian that it's the oppression of my Hawaiian side of the family is what allowed that colonial process, that colonial occupation of America is what allowed my Chinese grandfather to move here and to gain citizenship as an American and bring my mom over. So there's always internal conflict. So I think as a teacher, growing up, those different sides of your identity can seem like they're in conflict with each other, right? So like the haole side of your family or the Asian side of your family seems like it's in conflict with the Hawaiian side of your family. And that's how we grew up, with these internal conflicts. And it really left a bad impact on people growing up in my generation, I think, because they didn't really have self-acceptance. And so a lot of your parents and people that I grew up with, there's like, you know, when you look at the statistics of Native Hawaiians being like the largest population incarcerated or the largest population with substance abuse, it's because when we grew up, we were in constant identity crisis, you know? So now I see that myself and my peers and my family thriving, and not just being conflicted by all our different cultures, but by being empowered by all of our different cultures. And so now I think as a teacher, I try to make it so that my students learn from all of their different genealogies and draw mana, draw power, draw ancestral knowledge from all of their different ancestries, not just Hawaiian. And I learned that from tutu lady from my Hawaiian grandma. What I'm trying to say is in Hawaii, it's very different. In Hawaii, we have a lot of blended cultures, and I had to learn how to move away from having those cultures conflict. And I had to embrace all the different parts of where I come from and then make it work. You make it work in yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, going off of what you said about integrating culture, you mentioned that you dance hula. So, can you share what first drew you to hula and how it's shaped how you view yourself and the world today?
I was drawn to hula at a very, very young age. My mom had a dance studio in downtown Hilo, and right down the hall from her dance studio was a hula studio. And so I would walk in, pretty much was raised in the ballet studio. I started dancing ballet when I was probably like 3 years old. By the time I was 4 years old, I was performing ballet on a stage. But down the hall, there was a hula studio, a hula halau o ke kuhi. This is where Auntie Nalani and Auntie Pua was teaching at the time. So when I was really, really young, probably like 4 years old, I was maybe like eye level, height-wise, with the pa'u. So when I would go and watch them practice, I only was like eye level with the bottom half of their body. So my memories of hula, my early memories of hula are watching them practice in their studio, and like I only really paying attention to like the bottom half, like the footwork, and their knees were always bent. And I could hear from down the hall, Auntie Pua and Auntie Nalani yelling like, point your toes, point your toes. and they would point their toes. And so I thought at the time, like, I would compare ballet and hula, and I thought that at the time, I thought the styles were so different. But then I danced ballet until I was in maybe like 7th grade, and then I got over it. I just grew into my rebellious phase. I wanted to do something different. And so my mom's like, well, if you're not going to do ballet, then you got to do hula. So you decide. And then I chose to do hula. So I paddled canoe too in between, and I went to hula. And when I started dancing hula, I thought, wow, hula is actually very similar to ballet technically, and more so like in the mindset. So in ballet, in order to do like the petite allegro and the jumps and the spins and everything, you really have to be in like a focused mindset. You cannot be distracted mentally. Otherwise, you're going to get injured, you know, like landing your jumps and everything like that. Hula is very similar. So my transition into hula was pretty easy because hula is the same way. Once you walk through the halau doors, once you put your pa'u on, you're in a hula mindset. You're focused in the moment. You're focused on your dance. And everything else that doesn't have to do with what you're doing in that moment gets left outside the halau. You know what I mean? So you don't bring it with you. You're just focused on what you have to do in that moment. So to answer your question, what interests me about hula is basically at the time that I was presented with the option.
It was better than ballet.
It was dance. I was raised by a dance teacher, and so dance was not an option for me. There was a point where I was given an option on what kind of dance I wanted to do, and that's when I chose hula.
Wow,
Wow, that sounds crazy. Dancing at Merrie Monarch is like such an honor, and Camryn told me that you danced at Merrie Monarch. Is that true? Mm-hmm. So what did that mean for you, like that experience dancing there on such like a global stage? What did it mean for you, like personally and culturally?
So let me talk culturally first. Culturally, I don't really think of it as a cultural thing. I just think of it as more even of a spiritual thing, if that makes sense.
What does that mean?
It means that Merrie Monarch or performance time forces you to, like I was saying about being in the hula mindset or being in a focused mindset. performing forces you to be in a focused mindset. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, like, normally if you're in a bad mood or if you're dealing with any kind of problems in your life, you're forced to rise above your problems. You're forced to overcome those little things that might normally irritate you. And you're forced to consciously focus on something that is positive and good and has a function and a healthy impact on other people and the lahui. So kind of going outside of yourself where culturally, I guess, it's about doing something, making a personal sacrifice in order to bring something to the community that is inspiring and educating to them and just bigger than yourself as an individual. You know, personally, what Merrie Monarch has done for me personally is it's taught me how to overcome my challenges. It's taught me to do things that never in my whole entire life did I think I would do. Like my first Merrie Monarch, just getting my kupe'e together and cleaning it and making my kupe'e, making my leis, going into the bush to harvest my hau and sew my own a'ahu. Like those are things that on a daily basis you don't really do regularly. So forcing myself to do things and go places and experience things and achieve things that I would not normally do if it were not for the performance aspect. And when I say spiritual, I mean ceremonial in the sense that all hula it's about ceremony. It's about rising to a place in your consciousness where you are embodying a story that is hundreds of generations older than you. And basically just working through your own personal hardships. So, for example, the past, 10 Merrie Monarchs, I've been pregnant. I've had morning sickness. I've literally gone to practice, puked, jumped back on stage practice. I've danced pregnant. I've literally thrown up before the performance and then just get myself together. You're up late making your leis. At the performance level, aside from the kids who dance with us, the olapa keiki, all of the adults who dance for our halau have full-time jobs, have families, and they're not just easy jobs. They all contribute to the lahui in their work. They all work with the communities. They all, some of them work in education. They all have kids. They all have homes that they need to take care of. Everybody is busy, but nobody complains. Everybody just handles their personal business, shows up to practice, does all the things that they need to do to know their dance, to make their a'ahu, to make their lei, and to just be around other people who are at that level of focus and commitment and being able to rise above the mediocre things that could normally bring a person down if they were not in a spiritual enlightened state of heightened enlightenment or heightened spirituality. I think being around other people like that in that mode is inspiring. It's empowering. It gives you motivation to do the same. When you're playing on a team and you see everybody working hard, makes you want to work hard too. So for me personally, the biggest thing I get out of Merrie Monarch specifically is training my body and training my mind to overcome any challenge in order to do the work that's bigger than me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, flipping over to our event last week. I wasn't able to attend because of volleyball, but I know you guys were there at the march last week, Thursday. So could you just share what your thoughts were on the march that we did last week with everything going on surrounding our admissions policy?
Well, speaking of getting over myself to rise to the higher occasion, the march was, I was kind of sad because I wanted everybody to march. It seemed like only the seniors marched to go get the younger kids. And I definitely think the younger classmen, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, I kind of thought it would be fun to have everybody march. But I know that due to logistics and safety reasons, we couldn't have everybody on the road at that time. The dance, you know what's interesting about that event we had? ʻōlelo, I think it was called. What was it called
It
again?
was.
What's interesting about that event, if we're talking about hula, is I came to this school. I was a hula dancer before I came to this school, and I came to this school, and every year for makahiki, the students do the makahiki dances. And I'm familiar with the dances, but I never did participate. I never did participate in any of the dances that the students were doing. Just because I felt that, I felt kind of not really disconnected, but I don't know how to explain it. In my halau, we treat hula very sacred. And so when there are other people who are still learning how to do that, you kind of don't want to put your mana in a space where other people's mana, like, it's like a vibe thing,
Yeah.
So if the kids are still learning, and a lot of the times the kids they have gotten so much better. When I first got here, the Hawaiian culture was not as strong in the sense that the kids were still joking around during hula practice. They were not taking it as seriously because they were ashamed, maybe. But now I see so much kids, like, even if they don't know the dance super good or the words to the chant super good, they still give it. And I think that's one thing in the 10 years that I've been here, I've observed the growth in that aspect, the confidence of the students. But it never really crossed my mind to join in with the dancing. Just because for me, I keep my hula practice at my halau. And when we were doing the march, everybody did ʻōlelo. And it was the first time that I had ever danced on this campus, is to dance ʻōlelo with everybody. And I did it because there was a purpose. There was a ceremonial purpose. And I wanted to give my mana to that purpose. So it was good. I thought it was really good. Everybody contributed. The little kids contributed. The kula ha'aha'a contributed. Kula waina contributed. Kula ki'e. Everybody contributed their mana. And I hope that mana goes to where it needs to go for our school.
Wow. So with that, why do you think it's important for us to all unite and stand firm as a lahui?
I don't think we have any other option. Not uniting, not standing firm is not an option. when you ask why is it important, I don't even know if I would say it's important. I think it's necessary. It's vital. You cannot really put a reason behind it. It's kind of like, can the ocean exist without water?
Yeah.
No.
Can a forest exist without plants?
No.
Can a lahui exist without Hawaiians?
No ways.
You know? It's not a matter of importance. It's a matter of existence. We exist. The lahui exists. So, you know, to unite is not an option.
Yeah. So with that, have you seen a shift in students' pride and willingness to embrace Hawaiian culture and language in recent years?
I see lots of different shifts. I see students who kind of are, have been so engulfed with Hawaiian culture and Hawaiian identity and Hawaiian pride, and I see them kind of wanting to learn more about other cultures and other parts of the world, which is awesome and amazing. I also see students who, you know, vice versa, haven't really had too much experience with Hawaiian culture and are only just learning about it and developing that aspect of themselves now. So it depends on the individual student. Everybody's kind of at their own place with their personal growth and their identity. And like I said, it's not really about like being Hawaiian or dancing hula or speaking ʻōlelo Hawaii. It's really about knowing where you come from and having the connection to those places and those people that you come from. Having a really solid connection.
So how do you balance your Asian heritage with your Hawaiian identity in your life and in your classroom?
In my life and in my classroom. So Asian, you know, my mom is super Asian. My dad is half Asian. What I learned from my Asian family is to persevere. If you understand the history of China, if you understand the history of Asia, you know that Asians are the oldest civilization, one of the oldest living civilizations on planet Earth today, who still actually exist, who still are in charge of their own government. So there's a lot to learn from Asian culture about perseverance and not giving up and handling your business. Same exact thing for the Hawaiian culture. I think a lot of Hawaiians have moved away. There's a big diaspora of Hawaiians. There's more Hawaiians that live outside of Hawaii than in Hawaii. And I think to stay in Hawaii, to kupa'a, to hold your ground in Hawaii is so hard. It's easy to run away. And this is not a dig at Hawaiians who go to live somewhere else. That has its own challenges. But to kupa'a, to stay in Hawaii, despite all the different waves of people and cultures and economic situations that roll through Hawaii, to stay through it all and to evolve through it all and to still hold your ground and to still kupa'a in your culture and in your heritage and still malama your aina and still practice your traditions, that's very hard to do. So if there's anything that being Asian does that helps or supports my Hawaiian identity is to never, ever give up. To have a kind of thriving culture, and to work harder. When I lived in China, I worked with students. I taught in China, and being there made me want to come home more because I saw how hard those Chinese kids work. They have to take a test. They have to pass a test in 3 different languages before they can even graduate from high school.
Whoa.
And I was in China, and I just thought to myself, like, bro, I got to go home. I got to start training the Hawaiian kids because these Chinese kids are going to take over the world. And so to me, it's kind of like motivation to get the kids here in Hawaii, no matter what they are, whether they're Asian, Hawaiian, Mexican Hawaiian, whatever kind Hawaiian. I really think that the Hawaiian kids in Hawaii today, they need that global exposure because they need to know what they're up against. And everybody's trying to come here, not just the Asians. Everybody's trying to come here. So if we are going to stay and if we are going to kupa and if we are going to be the leaders of the land, we need to know what we're up against. So we need to know our other cultures and we need to be able to connect to them. Something fabulous about Hawaiian kids now is we're the only ones who can say that we could be true global leaders. Because Chinese leaders, they only Chinese. Japanese leaders, they only Japanese. European leaders, they only European. You know what I'm saying? The Hawaiian leader, we're all of those things. So
Very
the Hawaiian leader really does have the genealogical, the genetic makeup. The Hawaiian today has the genetic makeup to truly be a global leader. Think about it.
Very true.
Yeah.
So then, looking toward the future, what hopes and dreams do you have for Hawaiian education and cultural perpetuation for the next and future generations?
I hope and pray that hula has left such a big impression on me in my life and how I teach and how I learn. When I first started dancing, we were taken out on huaka'i, and the chants that we learned, we did out in the spaces, in the environment. And so to this day, I think that kids need to get out. I think that you need to go there to know there. You need to visit these spaces and have these real world experiences. So in my perfect dream world, and when I interviewed to work at KS, I told them this. I told them in my perfect dream world, seniors would not be on campus. Seniors should have jobs, should have internships, should be volunteering in the community.
Yeah.
So in my perfect world for Hawaiian education, you guys cannot be stuck in a classroom all day, every day. It's so unhealthy. Even the younger kids, kulaha'a, my own kids, I don't even think it's healthy. I don't send them to summer school. I don't send them to, summer programs or fall programs. I want them to spend the least amount of time in a classroom as possible because I don't think that learning can only take place sitting at a desk, staring at a screen or a worksheet. I think that authentic learning there needs to be a physical processing of the learning in order for it to stick and in order for it to really be digested in your system and in order for you to be able to execute what you learn. So in my perfect world for Hawaiian culture, take the kids out. Take them out.
Touch the aina.
Yeah. Touch the dirt, smell the sulfur.
Well, mahalo nui, special guest host Damon, and our guest Sage.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here, and thank you for watching episode 4 of Share the Poi. Mahalo.
Thank you, Camryn. Good job.